Greetings to one and all. It's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another episode of Countermeasures Creative Lockdown, the podcast, which you can download on Apple and you can also view on YouTube if you want to see our handsome faces. Now, today I have a very good friend of mine, Steve Brown. He is a 3D animator and has been for over 20 years, and recently took a foray into running his own business, which is all to do with pottery, which we're going to get into later. And we've been friends for over a couple of decades now. So, Steve, welcome to the show, mate. This is it. We made it. It took us about 6 months to get here, but we're here at last.
We got there, better late than never.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thanks for coming on it and everything. It's I know it's always tricky to find time. I mean, last year, everyone was just dossing around, not doing much, so it was fine. And this year, like, everyone's back to work, so it takes a little bit longer to get organised. But I appreciate you coming on and everything.
No props.
Yeah, how are things with you?
Good, yeah. Just I've actually just taken a month off, so I'm back to work this week. So
yeah,
I feel quite, there's stages in my career where I take a bit of a month or two off, and the last one was this month. So it's been nice to take a break and kind of feel re-energized and ready to get back to it.
Yeah, it's nice not to be, when because we both started our careers literally on the same day, didn't we?
Yeah.
Well, a bit of backstory is that we were both at uni together, and we knew each other from uni, and then we pretty much started working in central London, more or less. It was pretty much the same week or two, wasn't it? It was a small window,
basically.
And then slowly a lot of our friends started coming down, and and then you get to meet lots of new people all in the industry and doing different creative things. Ever since then we've just kind of, as time goes on, your job changes. So maybe it's not 9 to 5 so much, maybe you're doing 3 days a week, and then suddenly you're doing 24 hours a day for a month, and then you have a month off, and it's much more sort of sporadic.
Just a bit. I mean, this industry as well, you never tell when you do, things can go a little bit pear-shaped last minute, and you suddenly have to work quite late for quite a number of days or weeks or whatever. So but I'm sure you know what it's like. It's
but not many people can handle it. I don't think there's a lot of people that just like 9 to 5 and being paid every month, and I think that's fine, and I like the idea of that stability. But when you're working for yourself, that's not the case. You may be intensely busy for a couple of months, and then maybe it'll be a bit of a quiet period, and maybe you won't get paid for 2 or 3 months, and so it's all like sort of working out, and just balancing things off, like you say. So suddenly, if you find a gap where you can have some time off to do another project or to just like reset, then that's just the way that you now work, rather than being 9 to 5.
I mean, I think you just need to choose your time when you do work late, because you could work late all the time if you wanted to. I mean, the companies I work for, they'd have me working late all the time if they could. I think that's something you kind of learn as well as you progress through through your career, that you don't work late all the time, but you do have to, you have to give a bit sometimes, and when things go a bit pear-shaped, like you said, you just got to put the hours in and do it. But I think when you do start off, I mean, you just like go hell for leather. I was working late every night, and and it's just like constant, and then you just think, what the hell am I doing this for?
Well, I do that too. My work sort of shifts in phases. Sometimes I get all my evenings off in the week, and sometimes I have to work a couple of them. And again, it's just the way the work flows, especially the last year being with the lockdown and everything. It's all been quite sporadic, so I've just been I've been sort of jumping on stuff as it comes in, but usually I tend to have a much more structured approach, so that you don't end up working weekends and evenings. But like you said, when you first start out, you just go for everything all the time and just burn yourself out. Whereas as you get older, like us older gentlemen, you have to take your foot off the gas occasionally.
About 4 p.m. start taking it off.
4 p.m. Monday, and then I'll be back in the office Thursday. That's how
if you're lucky.
If you're lucky. Now listen, this podcast has the same structure that the previous guests I've had on this very kindly have gone through, and it's just a list of 10 questions that are just talking about your kind of a little bit of sort of history, a little bit of your sort of creative journey, if you like, on how you got where you are. And I've been getting some good responses from these over time. You know, I've had some like few students and a few college tutors have contacted me and said that their pupils have found it quite useful and things like that. So, you know, and if I've been finding it quite nice getting back in touch with a lot of people that I haven't spoken to so much about, you know, this kind of creativity and this side of things for a while. So let's kick off with question 1. So the first question, it's a bit generic, but it is, when do you first remember yourself leaning towards being creative?
I think, oh gosh, I think there's times. I think every kid, you know, when you're very young, you know, you tend to just draw and make sort of, you know, patterns and do all kinds of stuff when you are a certain age. But I think there's definitely a point where you kind of, I think for me, it was when you see a piece of art or you see something which you'd like to try and reproduce, and I start off just copying stuff. You know, I think that's where I first started to realize, you know, that I wanted to, you know, that I enjoy drawing. And I think one of my earliest memories was my uncle Al. He was basically a great artist, or he's great at copying. He never admits he is, but he's a very good artist. But he used to draw, when I used to see him, he used to draw these pictures of all the Dandy and Beano characters.
Okay, yeah.
And I used to love all those, you know, the Christmas annuals. So Christmas Day would be opening it, and I'd go to all my aunties and uncles, and you know, he'd show me Beano and he'd start copying them. I was like, oh my god, you know, just seeing somebody draw that well in front of you, you just think, oh my god, you know, I want to do that. And then you draw it and it'd be terrible, and you just think, okay, but it gives you a milestone, it gives you something to aim for, you know. And I remember the first time where, you know, I looked at his and I started to draw, and it got as, you know, as it wasn't quite as good as him, but I knew it had improved. And I think just seeing that progress, you know, you suddenly realize, wow, you know, if I work at this, I can actually get better at it. And I think that's the first kind of, I think that's when I first started to become, you know, knowing that I was kind of more into the whole creative things.
Yeah. And I think with drawing as well, sorry to interrupt you, but with drawing, like everybody, you know, there are people that say, oh, I can't draw. I think everybody can draw. Everybody has the capability for mark making and doing, you know, maybe their styles are different, or the way they approach it, or how they hold pencils and how they get on with paint is different. But everybody has that skill from day one, you know, from when you're a kid. And I think that it's just perseverance is such a huge part of that process of it's just like you said, you saw something you wanted to draw, you couldn't do it so well, so you practiced, and then a week later or 2 weeks later or a month later you got better, and then progressively throughout your life. That's the same with all of that.
And it's the fact that you want to do it. You know, I mean, some kids don't want to do it; they're not interested. You know,
that's right.
It's that initial idea that you think, wow, you know, that's what I want to do, and I still do it now. You know, no matter what I'm doing, even now, the stuff I'm doing now, I see something and I say, that's exactly how good I want to get.
And every now and again, you get that drawing out from your uncle, and you're like, this time, I'm gonna do it this time.
I'm gonna do it.
40 years, I can do it. But I know what you mean. You want to, you need that kind of when you reach a certain level, then you start looking at other people that are doing stuff better than you, and it gives you a direction, doesn't it? It gives you something to aim for.
And I think it's about sort of also building confidence in something as well. And I think, you know, because I used to draw all the time, you know, I got known at school for the guy who, you know, who can draw and stuff. And I remember being at school, and you know, I was into all kinds of creative stuff, not just drawing, but I used to paint all the. Do you remember those little Citadel miniatures, Games Workshop stuff?
I've got a shoebox full of them in the loft. Yeah, I know. Yeah, all those the little lead figures with all the lead, which
I think the lead ones have been banned now because it's like toxic. But they were definitely better than the plastic.
That's what happened to my hand. It's the lead poisoning from when I was 8. I think you know, everyone goes through that Dungeons and Dragons phase, don't they, of painting?
Well, the thing is, I never really played the games. I just painted them, and I painted them for, you know, I paint them for friends and stuff, you know, because they would just. I remember, again, it's this obsession for wanting to do well. I remember going to Chester, you know, my local city, and they basically they had a Games Workshop there, and all the Citadel miniatures were all, you know, in the glass cabinet, and it is a classic one again. You know, I'd see it, I think, oh my god, that's exactly how I'd want to paint it. And everyone at school was just painting like flat colours on it, where all these ones were all highlighted, and they had all the metal and dry brushed, you know, and I was like, you know, so it's that, again, it's that whole process of, you know, wanting to kind of do it as best as I possibly could, really.
And
it's also appreciating why it looks good, and trying to work out why how they get it to look that good. So it's that process again, and not like copying, but it's actually painting, or whether it could be anything else.
Oh no, absolutely. And the best way to practice, like you said, is to find something that you really like and just keep going. And eventually when someone says, oh, I like that, or someone like your art teacher acknowledges that you've got some skills of some kind, it's a big thing, because you feel like you've achieved something,
I think that age as well, I mean, I was, at school, I wasn't the most academic kid, so being good at something and good at art and stuff, you suddenly build your confidence with that, and you think, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do.
I'm going. And so, I'm assuming that you were like me, which is like you when you were younger, you like drawing and painting and doing all that kind of creative stuff, but you didn't necessarily know what you were going to be doing when you were 20. But you knew you wanted it to be linked to that somehow. Would that be right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I was from a little town in North Wales, and I think when I went down the art route, my dad was trying to push me more towards technical drawing, draftsmanship and all that kind of stuff. And he bought these books on technical drawing. I was just like, oh my God, this is just not me. Lots of straight lines, and I think he was a little bit worried, because I think he thought, oh, I'm going to be an artist, I'm going to be painting in the field, and trying to make a living from that. And I don't think we understood the scope of what art is, So I think
I guess at that time there wasn't like well, there were jobs in kind of like you could be an illustrator in a big ad agency or something, or you could be a freelancer or whatever. But I guess our parents kind of knew that was quite a difficult path to tread, and quite a rare path to be successful at. Whereas we were a weird time where we were growing up with a lot of technology that was changing. So what you ended up doing in your early 20s, you couldn't have decided that when you were 11 or 12 or 13, because I'd imagine half of the technology wasn't possible, like with the 3D animation and that, it wasn't as accessible.
Well, I guess so. I think the thing is, I mean, I was always into cartoons and animation as a kid anyway. I used to record them all and I used to frame through all on our video camera and stuff, and I started to get to know about animation. But I think it's something I always wanted to do, but I just didn't think it's going to ever be possible. So it was more of a sort of dream than anything. It was I just knew it was just like, it was done in Hollywood,
sure.
And it wasn't done in North Wales, or it's just completely. So it's more of a sort of something that I dreamt of, I guess, but not really. Thought it would actually happen. Really.
But again, I think it's that knowing that you've got access to something like that. When like when you first go to college and you see all the computers and everyone doing it, you're like, this is where it all kind of starts. You've got access to be able to create in that way. Whereas when you're like me, I'm from a little village in the middle of nowhere, and I just wanted to draw comic books all the time. But again, that was something that somebody else did successfully, and I just did it as like a thing that I did. And there was a bit where I thought maybe this might be something, but actually, in the back of my mind, I was thinking it probably is going to be quite difficult to get to that point. So I guess you got to have a dream, Steve, is what I'm saying. But also, at that time, I guess our parents wouldn't necessarily have been fully aware that it could be a possibility.
Exactly. And they want you to go down there, kind of make lots of money and make a career. So so to be an artist, they're like, well, maybe you should go this way. But they did lead me to do, they tried to edge me towards it, but they didn't force me into it. They let me sort of get on with it, really.
Like all good parents, they just give you options and hope you sort of find your own way, I guess, don't you? So I guess that brings us on to like education, developing those skills. So you like your drawing and everything when you were younger. I mean, what did you do next then for your like GCSEs and sort of onward from there?
Well, GCSEs were just sort of the usual lot. I mean, I did okay. I got a scrape through with B's and C's and everything, and then but all I did was I just wanted to go straight to art college. I mean, we got an art college in Wrexham, which I ended up going to for 4 years, and it's the first time I think just basically mixing with kids who just drew and just did art, and it was an absolutely fantastic 4 years. I think it's I think that's where things changed quite a bit. I wouldn't necessarily say I was actually I worked hard. I could have worked harder. I think it's a time where it was a bit sort of, you're discovering all kinds of new things. And I think at that time, you got lots of ideas what you want to do, but there wasn't any true focus. There's all kinds of, like, we did everything from photography to a bit of ceramics to printmaking. We did everything, and they throw everything at you, and it was really interesting. But I think at the end of it, I still wasn't quite sure which pathway I was going to. I mean, I was going down the illustration pathway at the time, but I just had to try and the animation thing had kind of disappeared a bit. I mean, I've just focused more towards illustration. But I don't think it was until kind of university. It all changed actually, because I took a year off because I wasn't quite sure whether I wanted to carry on doing illustration. And I took a year off basically to save money for university to do a degree in some art-based thing. And I worked behind a bar in a theatre, and I got chatting to this girl who was doing time-based media at university. And I'd never heard of heard of a time-based media course. It's just like, what the hell is that?
New. That's what I mean. We were at that pinnacle where those courses were starting to pop up,
So I was just like, gosh, that sounds interesting. I remember, it's funny, this one conversation with this girl suddenly just changed my whole future, really. And I went to apply for it, but it was too late. And I took a year off working in I was working there, and I worked in the day. I worked at a sign writing company in a factory, cutting out, signs. And it was a pretty, it was a very mundane job. I was doing the same thing every day, and I was meant to save money for university, but I just spent it all. I think I saved about £700.
I was going to say, like, after a week of just cutting out signs, you're like, I'm going to the pub now.
I need to go to the pub. So
I guess
it was good though. I was itching to get away after that. I just couldn't wait to get away, and I applied to this time-based media course the following year in Birmingham, and then then it all started from there, really. And again, I was still a little bit unsure which area I was going into, to be honest, because again, it was time-based media covered kind of quite a few areas like web design and animation,
quite broad,
a bit of everything, And again, it was another, you have these kind of milestones in your life where I basically saw a piece of 3D animation which a student had done, a third year student, and I was completely like blown away by it, and I couldn't believe that you could do kind of 3D animation on a home computer, on a normal Windows computer or Macintosh.
So it wasn't just like stop motion, like plasticine, Nick Park style. It was all done in.
It's completely computer generated. And I remember it so clearly, seeing it, and the kind of the emotion of seeing it, going, oh my God, that I can't believe it. And I remember seeing it, and I remember going to the tutor saying, like, who did this? Going to the third year, and I said,
it's rubbish.
Call that animation.
If you were to see that film now, would you have the same emotional reaction, or would you be like a bit
I would actually. No, I would.
Well, we've got the animator here today. We finally tracked down who did it.
Oh man, I'd love to know what that guy's doing now. Actually, but he was. I mean, he was 3 years ahead of. I thought I was at the forefront of when he first started doing. You could actually get 3D software on a home computer, but he's doing it 3 years before me, and that he must have been right at the start of it. Right at the beginning of. I think he did it in 3D Studio Max, and but I can remember. I remember that day seeing it, talking to the guy. He said, "Yeah, I did it in 3D Studio Max. I just spent £1,500 on an Apple Macintosh, and he said you can't get this software for an Apple Mac."
On PC.
And I was just like, "Oh my God!" I remember phoning my dad, and I said to him, "I said, look, I think I need to buy a PC." And I remember chatting to him about it, and I said, "Look, I'll sell my Mac, but I need to get a PC quite soon because I really need to get going with this software." And that's where it all kind of that's a that's where everything suddenly changed.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
not just that, but I think my whole focus on what I wanted to do, because I was still a little bit kind of all over the place regarding, and I was like doing a bit of photography, and I love photography. I had a little darkroom at the time in my house in North Wales, which I built, and I absolutely love photography, but it wasn't something where I don't think I really wanted to do as a career. I don't know why, but I just didn't, it just wasn't right for me. But I think at that point, I suddenly got completely focused, and I just, no more going out to clubs and pubs, although there was a bit of that obviously uni, but I think my days at university were pretty full on working. I mean, compared to my friends, I was just completely hooked, and I just wanted to animate all the time and learn the software.
I did the same. Much more like you. I was kind of heading down an illustration route, and right at I did a foundation year before I went to uni, and right at the end of my foundation year, we did a lot of Mac work. We did a lot of work on the Mac, so we were scanning in our images and starting to play around with them and building packaging and making posters and stuff like that. And I'd had a computer at home and could do a little bit of that, but it wasn't really, the computer was like an old Amiga, and the software wasn't very good, but you could draw on it, but you couldn't really do much else with it. And suddenly we were on Macs, where you've got like Photoshop and Freehand and Quark Express, and you could do all this type stuff. And within an afternoon, I was like, that's exactly what I want to do.
You just suddenly realized.
And by the time I got to uni, I was just like, it's graphic design all the way. And then I just happened to illustrate on the side. So it's funny how those little nudges, as you go along, you sort of know what you want to do, and then you get nudged along, and then suddenly you find your path. And like you say, I mean, I went out a fair bit, but I did a lot of work during college because I just wanted to get good.
You don't mind it, do you? You just want to do it, and it's kind of not, you don't feel like it's a chore, it just becomes an obsession. I mean,
it still is. I still every day I'm like, I want to do better than I did yesterday. I feel that pull, and it just, and the sad thing is it gets worse. But so you went through uni, and then obviously, how did you get your first job? Because you started working on Carnaby Street, just more or less where I did, didn't you? So
well, just before that, I when I finished university, I basically applied to I started to look at different companies. There weren't that many, to be honest. There were some quite big VFX studios like Framestore, which have been going for a while, and a few others. But I actually applied to computer game companies.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of computer game companies kind of in Leamington Spa area, where, quite close to Birmingham. I also didn't think I was ready to go to London and work in film. It just wasn't, again, it's that maybe, I don't know, I wasn't confident enough, but I thought that games would be a sort of progression to film. So I applied to a load of game companies, and I had this really embarrassing moment actually over the phone, and I was chatting to this game company, and he said, so tell us what your top 5 games are, computer games. And I was like, I don't even know 5 games.
You were like, Pong.
And I was just like, I know I did. I said one of them was Joust. I said Joust, which is this like terrible. I don't know if you remember.
I remember. I'm quite into. I'm still quite into my video games.
And there's a lot of quite good games around then. Yeah, there's a lot of great games around about then, but I just don't. I'm not a gamer. That wasn't interested in that. But I was more interested in the movement and the motion of the characters. So it was anyway. I applied to a few places. Didn't hear back from them. But during this time, just at my 3rd year university, I won this student award, and basically a studio in London, Realize Studio, which I don't think is going anymore, but they contacted some of the tutors at Birmingham, you see, and said, have you got any animation students? And obviously, again, there weren't that many animation courses around at the time, and they call it an animations course, part of the Birmingham, part of Time-Based Media, but none of the tutors knew anything about animation. And, you had to just buy all these new riders' books and it's to learn the software. So there's not many students. So I think this company basically contacted a few universities. And
so it's quite a niche thing. They're looking for something niche. Okay.
Well, it was just, there just weren't many kind of people who done animation at the time. So I think I think, I don't know how many they contacted, but they phoned me up because I'd gone back home to North Wales and I started working at part this sign racing company again.
They were like, "Oh, here's come on, Steve. Here's your old chair."
Yeah. And they were all taking the piss at me, going, "Oh, you've been to university and you're back here. You'll be here forever." And then I get this phone call. I was there for about a month, and I get this phone call from uni saying, "Oh, there's a company in London," And I was like, and I got really nervous, and I went down for an interview.
Yeah.
And I remember going to Carnaby Street, and London, that's the first time I've been to London on my own as well. And it was just absolutely amazing. I just remember going down there and having the interview in a cafe. They were just asking about me, and then I had to go off for half an hour for them to decide. And then he just said, "Yeah, you got the job. When can you start?" And I was like, "Oh my God."
That's so awesome.
It all happened very quickly. And obviously you were down in London at the time, weren't you? You got there before me. So.
Yeah, well, I did a placement in my second year at uni. And then basically at the end of my placement, they said, "When you finish uni, just come back and work for us." So I was like, okay. So I went. Okay. So my last year, I was just geared up to going to London. So I just had focusing on finishing the course and doing as well as I could do. But my other foot was already on it. I was already on the way there. So, and I came down and with my folio at the end of when we'd come down for like new designers. We were exhibiting at new designers, and while we were at new designers, I just came down and showed my folio almost as like a formality, really. And they just said, "Yeah, great. When can you start?" And it was a Friday, and I said, "Monday," and they were like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay," and then off I went, and that was it. And then I think you phoned me that week to say you just started as well. So yeah, because I was on the corner of, I was right opposite Liberties, so yeah, on Argyle Street, which was about 5 doors away from where you were working as well, wasn't it?
So you went straight down there. I didn't. So you went literally straight from uni straight down.
I stayed before, like John and any of our other sort of friends and colleagues, before they started sort of moving down. I've been down there for like 3 months already over the summer holidays. And actually, Ian Glover came. He was the next to come down. So it was like, I think me, you, and Ian were probably the first ones down here. It was such a fun time. Like you said, London's awesome. I went in there. I went the other day for the first time in ages, obviously because of the COVID and all that stuff. And it's just brilliant, as brilliant now as it was when we first.
I just love
Central London. And Carnaby Street especially. I've got such a big heart for that area. Like the bars and the shops and the restaurants, and we that was our stomping ground for such a long time. And all the things we did and all the places we went out around there, and Frank's, where we used to go for lunch, and all that stuff is just it's just a brilliant experience.
It does. I mean, I think first being down there, it took a while to get to know people. I mean, thank God you were down there, because you obviously you introduced me to another bunch of friends and stuff. But I did find at first it's hard to because the company I work for realized there's only about 4 people there anyway, and 2 of those are the manager, the owner the company. So so there's only another guy who's quite a lot older than me. So it wasn't really a studio where you go there and everyone's out. I mean, that came later on, but the first 3 years, it's a very small and quite kind of compared to these big VFX companies where you got like literally 800 people there. That's when
but it's funny because and I think the Appetite, where I was, it was Beresford at the time, but like they had a little bit of a social thing going on, because like Stuart and all those guys, we used to go out for drinks with them, and there was a bit of that going on. But slowly over that sort of 6 months of people sort of slowly coming to London and getting jobs, I remember you and I going out in town and it just being like the 2 of us, and then 6 months later we went to like the social, and I think I counted 32 of us like on one night out, because when you first come down, like you said, you don't really know anyone else, so you just sort of stick together, and suddenly like we'd have like these epic nights out. It's just awesome. But they were good times. The social was always brilliant. The first time we went there, it was me, I remember me, you, and Ian went there, and someone had told us it was quite good, and we went for a drink in it, and it was obviously kicking off, everyone's dancing, having a great time. And do you remember, but the Chemical Brothers turned up, and they were just just DJing there, and I just couldn't believe it. I was so blown away that they just the guy who owned the place, or one of the bar staff, or whoever I spoke to, just said, "Oh yeah, they just turned up and started doing a set," and you're like, that's so awesome, such a great,
that's amazing.
Such a hub of creativity around that area, so I guess sort of the next question was like, what did you do next and the challenges you faced? Obviously we sort of just talked a bit about that, sort of the transition. So did you move straight into London, and were you commuting for a while, or what was your, when you got your job?
Yeah, no, I just moved. I remember being shocked at how expensive it was for rent. So I think God, I think I was in Edgware, Zone 5, which is miles out. So so I just used to I came down and commuted and stuff. And the contract was only for, I think the contract was only for 6 months or 8 months, something like that. So I kind of thought, okay, well, maybe I'll be down there for 8 months, and then that'll be it. So, but it basically just carried on for, God, I was there for 3 years.
Yeah.
So they just kept renewing the contract, and it was a bit disorganized. It didn't really have any kind of admin there, so the whole thing was very a bit dodgy, really.
Yeah, well, I guess when it's a small business that suddenly gets a little bit bigger, it's you need like extra people to do the admin and all that stuff, but you can't maybe afford it, and you'd rather put the money in the talent.
Yeah,
so
there's no contract. Well, they said a contract, but it wasn't an official contract which you'd sign. It's just like, oh, can you stay for another 2 months? Yeah, okay. Well, it's just all word of mouth.
Random. Yeah. And so where did you go after that? Because did you work at Jim Henson's for a while?
Jim Henson's happened after that. I felt like, if I was looking back at it now, I wish I could have. I stayed at Realize for too long. I mean, there's two different ways of looking at it. Do you stay at a company and climb the ladder and kind of slowly, work your way up to the top, or do you move around and start, move around to different companies? And I personally feel it's important, especially in via visual effects or TV. I've really enjoyed moving around. I've met a lot of different people, and obviously each studio has a different pipeline and way of working. So you get to kind of, I don't know, it's just nice to meet a different variety of people. And so I basically stayed at Realize for too long. It was just like, because it's such a small team, I feel like when I went to Jim Henson's and it's suddenly a big team of, there's another sort of 10 animators there, the whole team for this particular show, there's probably about 70 people on it. And I was just like, wow, this is fantastic, and I was like, I should have done this, maybe a year and a half ago. But you live and learn, and it was, I think also it was kind of a confidence thing. I think I was never confident to go and move, go to a proper big film company, really. So but Jim Henson's was great, and it was, it's a bit of an honor to work there as well, and in their studio, and we were working, they were doing various kind of they were doing all the mechanics downstairs, because they still did a lot of puppetry at the time. So it's this kind of,
so you just had a warehouse full of like Kermit the Frogs and stuff like that.
They were, well, it was like, what were they doing? I think they were working on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so they had all these kind of characters from that, and they were just incredible. You go down, there'd be us upstairs who all sat at a computer staring at screens, and you'd go down and it'd be like a big workshop of engineers and mold makers, and it was just fantastic. Awesome. It was just great to be there. So, and I met
what exposure. I mean, you're doing 3D animation on screen and putting these things together, and then you're going and seeing these characters that are being built out of proper 3D models and everything. I mean, like, in terms of understanding what you're doing on screen, being able to see these kind of tactile objects, and that's I mean, that wouldn't have been something you'd have been able to do in your first job. So moving into a bigger company like that, obviously you get better access to that sort of better exposure to that kind of environment, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And it's also, I think they did things properly. So they would have dailies, so you'd send your shots in, and I think it's the first time where you have to discuss your shot, your animation shot in front of the director, in front of a whole team of people. So that was actually quite daunting. I think that was the first time I'd actually, apart from university where you have to do that kind of 20-minute lecture in front of, you have to give a lecture in front of people. It's the first time I'd ever sat in front of people. And I remember that university, and I absolutely hated it. I really, struggled with that. But also it all came back, actually talking in front of a load of people. And I think that was one of the biggest sort of, it was a bit of I used to find that quite difficult, but again, it's just one of those things, once you've done it a few times, you just don't think about it then, and it just, everyone's there to kind of they just want to work with you and help you.
Yes, so, exactly, when you know you're surrounded by friends and colleagues that are like-minded and have been through the same thing as you, it's not, you don't feel so isolated, do you?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's such a great, I mean, the industry is great, the people are great, and it's always quite fun. You turn it into a bit of a fun thing dailies as well. So you're there talking about a lot of stuff, and they're also telling you about what's wrong with your shot as well, so you're having to take stuff on your chin as well and say, well, actually this shot's not working because of this, and you think, okay, well, that's fair enough. And then you'd have to go back and address things, and
but that's good, because you'll learn, if you're working somewhere where everyone just says yes to all the time, go for it, keep going, that's fine. But you also need to be in an environment where people around you are making your work better, and by giving you those little hints and tips and things like that, and you taking them on board and making changes, I mean, you grow creatively in that environment, don't you? So no, it's, I think, I was the same. I stayed too long in my first job. The reason I stayed is because I loved it. I was there for like 4 years. When I left, like, people before I went to uni, they said you should be in your first job for a year and then you should just go somewhere else. But a year went by so quick, and I was just like, well, I'm really enjoying it. I was enjoying the work, and I like working with the people. And before I knew it, like 4 years had gone by. I think I was there might have even been 4.5 years. I knew it was time to move, but it was a tough decision for me to leave at that point, because I really loved it,
Yeah, well, I think in that case, I think it's worth, I mean, I didn't, I knew for a year, after about 2 years, I definitely had enough and I wanted to move on. But I think, if I'd enjoyed it more and kind of, the projects weren't as interesting as some of the other things, but if you were enjoying where you were, then why not break the mold? You can stay there and enjoy it a bit. But or you just stay, I mean, some people stay at the same company for, most of their career. I mean, I think it's like a personality thing as well. I mean, I got quite itchy feet, I just wanted to get out and just have a bit of a change, really.
Yeah, and I guess that might be like you said, it's a confidence thing too, because when you first start, I don't know if you felt this way, but I was like, God, I've actually got a job doing what I want to do. I'd better not mess this up. So like there's a whole kind of, I think everyone in this kind of career, I'm sure in many others, but especially in this one where it's such a demand on you from creative point of view and your ideas and all this kind of stuff, that there's a moment where, I mean, I felt this way, where you feel like an imposter for a while. You feel a bit like you're going through the motions of doing what you're meant to be doing, and you're doing your best, but at the same time you're like, I probably shouldn't be here, really.
Yeah, when are they all going to find out?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they still haven't found out, Steve. It's been 20 years.
20 odd years. Can't believe it. They're so silly, aren't they?
Yeah, you fools. So where did you go then after Jim Henson's? Were you there for a while?
Well, I started to, I worked at Nexus then, going into more, they do more kind of music videos and kind of TV commercials, but they're a company that they're more kind of, they combine a lot of 2D animation with 3D animation, and more, I guess, kind of more creative, using kind of 3D much more creatively. So instead of the usual kind of VFX realistic creatures and, realistic fur, they basically do more kind of, they had more illustrators working for them, and we basically turned a lot of the illustrative stuff into 3D, and they do like things like they'd make 3D look like stock frame animation, so they'd animate everything on 2s and 4s to make it look like kind of Nick Park, but it was actually 3D. They'd combine, they'd draw over the top of the 3D stuff, so it's really creative, and they've done some absolutely fantastic stuff. In fact, I'm working for them now. I've been working for them since 2003, and I always go back there because I just love, I've always kind of jumped between kind of VFX and TV music video stuff, because again, I get a bit kind of bored and a bit, I think when you're doing creature stuff all the time in film, you just get completely sick of it. And then you want to do something different. So you do more, I guess, cartoony, snappy animation in TV, and the music videos are a bit more kind of, it's just very different. You don't get the time and budget, so everything's done a lot quicker. So you have to work quicker and come up with quick ideas and just get out there, which is also quite a nice way of working, rather than in film where you can be working on one shot for 4 months.
Yeah, sure.
And I could be on three different jobs at Nexus over the course of doing one shot in film, you know. So it's just like two different. But then you think, oh, I want to do something really polished and really nice in film. So you wouldn't then go back to film again. So it's kind of
that's good. You can flip between it, and my only sort of comparison to that is that one day I'm doing a logo, one day it's a brochure, one day I'm shooting an ad. So it's the same thing. If I was just sat down doing literature all the time, I'd just go insane. But I do, the fact that you can flip between different jobs and it keeps things varied and fresh. I think that's really important when you're having ideas about things. Like you said, if you want to do something really finely polished or whatever, but you're doing this other job over here that isn't quite ticking the boxes, it can be frustrating as a creative person. So the fact that you can do both is really good.
It makes a big difference. I think it's kept me sane throughout this industry, really. I think again, if I don't think I could ever have just worked in film for the full 20 odd years. It's just Mate,
I can't believe it's 20 years. We're talking about 20 years. When you say it, it's just such a long time. It's insane. And I don't feel any different than I did the day we started. I just feel like I've learned a lot, but I don't feel it's a long time.
It is.
So I think we're around question 6, which is let's talk about a piece of work you did that didn't go well. This is always my favorite question, which is like, tell me something that's really rubbish that you've done.
No, well, I think
something you might like to change that you've done.
No, I think everybody has gone through this in their career. There's some right ups and downs. Thank God there's a lot more ups and downs, but I think the biggest thing was when I was working at Frame Store, working on the Jungle Book. When was this? About 7-8 years ago. And I think at the time I was pretty shattered. When you freelance, you tend to kind of start looking for work towards the end of a contract, and the contract's ending. So about a month before the end, you start to have a bit of a look around, and you start chatting to your old work colleagues, and they say, oh, well, this is happening. You really ideally should take a bit of a break, in between. But, there's been times where I didn't, so I'd go literally finish at one company on the Friday, and I'd start at a new company on the Monday. And this is a time when I'd done a few of them, and I was pretty tired. I needed a break, and I was working on Jungle Book, and there's a shot which I was working on. And basically it's hard to explain, but they were basically, all it was is a simple shot of a monkey holding this piece of fruit, and it's coming down dangling from the canopy, and it's like trying to tempt Mowgli into the canopy.
Right.
But they'd shot it in a way where they'd shot this piece of fruit on a stick. So they'd shot the stick, right?
Yeah.
And then I had to attach a hand to this stick, this fruit that was already moving.
Yeah.
And it just looked terrible. Like, I remember just saying to them, look, just do a 3D fruit so I can just basically do the whole thing completely CG.
Yeah.
Well, I was limited, and I was limited to the plate that was shot of this fruit. So it looked like the fruit was driving a hand rather than the hand driving the fruit.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of, and I was in this shot, and there's not just one, there's about 8 shots. And I got really frustrated. I was like, well, there's lots of great shots of, all these other characters in the Jungle Book. Why have I got this bloody fruit shot? And not just one, it was like, load of them. No. And I was like, and I kept saying, let's do a 3D fruit. And anyway, after about 3 months on that, they decided to do a 3D fruit, and I was just like, I was over it. And then they knew I was a little bit pissed off about it. So they put me in this shot of Baloo, the bear, running through a forest. And I just couldn't. It was just a simple bear running through, this forest. I just couldn't get it right. The weight was out, and I just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And they just said, look, you need to do this. You need to get the weight and the pelvis right. And I just couldn't do it. And I couldn't see what was wrong with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I need to. And I remember every lunchtime when I was there, I used to just walk out the office and just walk as far as I possibly could.
Really?
So, the office in Soho. I remember once I walked to Primrose Hill in lunch hour. I just wanted to get away and just try and refresh and come back. Yeah. And I remember just thinking, I need to just get out of here. And I spoke to my supervisor, and he said, look, why do we give you another shot? I was like, look, I just can't. I just really need a break. I'm completely burnt out. I'm also really, you know, after the episode with this fruit, I was just like, so that didn't go well.
I can't eat fruit anymore. Hate bears.
Yeah, not at fruit ever since. And I remember it's the first time ever, and I said, look, I need to just, and I quit. I said, look, I need a break, and and it's the first time in my career that I've actually, you know, I said, look, I need to get out of here, and I left.
That's a big step, because you know, plenty of very good people do that all the time when they just know they've reached a limit where they're like, do you know what, I just need to do something else, or have a break, or refresh, or whatever. And it's actually harder to admit it to yourself than it is to tell other people, because you don't want to let yourself down, you don't want to let people down around you, obviously, but also admitting the fact that you actually have to sort of take a step back, and this isn't quite right for you. And it didn't have to be a bear and a banana, it probably could have been anything you were working on. It was just that moment in your time, you know, in your career, where you were just like, you know, I need a holiday, or I just need a few days off, you know.
No, you're right, it is kind of realizing that there's a problem, you know, and when you can't see it, when you see the animation, you just think this isn't right, and you can't actually fix it. You just think, man, I need to get out of here and have a break.
Yeah,
you know, and it's actually quite scary, because you just think, God, have I lost it completely now? Can I animate again? But then it all, you know, it's after a bit of a break, and it's fine. And that's the other time as well where I remember contacting Blue Zoo, who do a lot of kids TV stuff, and I remember taking a bit of time off, and I sent them an email and I said, look, have you got any kids TV stuff to do? And they had this fantastic series about this dragon for Nickelodeon, and I remember going on to that, and it was just having a complete break from film, and doing this kind of cartoony stuff, this character-based stuff, and it is just fantastic. And I was like, God, this is the best thing. And you know, again, you know, they some of these studios don't have budgets, and I remember they never have a great budget, but their projects are fantastic. So I only worked there for 3 months, because it's actually hard to live in London on the salary they offer. But I just had to do it. I didn't care about the money. It was just all about just doing something different and doing a fun project, you know, and getting away from this. So that was really good. And but that was a tough time, you know, in my career, I think.
Then, so let's talk about one that you're really proud of, then, which is one of, you know, obviously there are many in your vast folio of things that you've done. What's something that it could be recent, or it could be something that you always, you know, when people say, what do you do, you know, your go-to kind of piece of work?
I think I always go back to,
was it the banana thing? I went back and I cracked that banana thing.
I managed to do it. Yeah, I'd never want to revisit that shot again. But no, I think the big one for me, I think it is District 9. You know, that's quite a long time ago now.
Yeah, I love that film.
It was funny, because it was one of those kind of films. I remember went over to Vancouver to work on it, and I think that had something to do with it. I think just I love traveling, and you know, I've gone traveling quite a few times with work, and I think it's just it's one of those projects which you kind of, when they told me about it, I was like, oh, that sounds quite cool. And you go out there, and it ended up being quite a big film, and it's a very low budget. I think the budget was something like 30 million to do District 9. And because it's low budget, you know, they didn't have time to like faff around with shots. They just had to get it done. But they had a great team on it. There's only a team of maybe 10 people, and everybody animated. So 10 animators on it, and you know, normally over 6 months you'd probably animate maybe, I don't know, whatever, like say 10-15 seconds worth of animation, up to 30 seconds max. But District 9, I remember after 6 months working on that, I'd come out with like 2.5 minutes worth of creature animation. But it was so well, the whole project was so well done, because basically the animation supervisor just had full confidence in what we're doing. He said, right, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve. He really got into the mindset of what the characters should be doing, how they should be animated, and he just let us do it, you know, rather than a lot of things, and a lot of the process in film, you know, it's a lot of noodling where it comes back, and you're trying to get it through maybe 3 or 4 different people, you know, from the lead animators to the supervising animators, and then the director, and everyone's got, you know, even some producers sometimes, you know, everyone wants to have their little bit, you know, and everyone's always got a different opinion about it. So you're trying to get through all these people, and in the end, you just get, you know, you just say, yeah, tell me what you want, change that, and you do it, and you just keep doing it, and it becomes a bit of a mishmash of all
and
different
it's not
ideas.
Always for the best either, is it? It's not, when you've got that many people involved, everyone's got a little direction that they want to take.
Most of the time. Yeah, most of the time it doesn't work. And
when people say just do what you want, that's just like the best job you can have. It's just like, here's your parameters, here's your deadline.
Yeah.
Just crack on, and then to have that freedom is
it was great. And what was great about that show is you could you basically submit your animation, and the next day you'd see it completely rendered and knit and completely photoreal, and you'd just think, oh my god, it looks amazing. So normally it takes a bit longer, but the team on it was so quick. The next day you'd see it, and you'd look at it and you'd be able to kind of refine little bits on it and then resubmit it while you got on with the other shots.
That film's so good. I'm thinking about it now because there's a whole sequence where it's filmed through like they're filming it on it. He's got like a film crew going around with him and stuff. So there's like shots through the camera and and it's quite complex as well. It's not a simple thing. There's like aliens running in and through materials and things that have actually been shot, and I remember trash heaps and all sorts of stuff going on. And
there'll be a lot. It's one of those films you look back. I bet if you watch it now, there'll be loads of bits in it which you'll forget about and think, oh my god, I remember this. And then and it's just a great film. And and I think also just being over the years, just working abroad sometimes, again, new people, completely new environment. I thrived on that, so just being away, it's just fantastic. Absolutely loved it. And I'd always advise anyone to just basically, if they had chance while they could when they're younger, is just get away and do a bit of the traveling, because it's I just think it opens you up to a lot of different sort of not just creative people, but just kind of being on your own and just getting on with creating a whole going to a completely somewhere new which you don't know about, and discovering a new area, and it gives you a chance to travel.
Also, I mean, imagine a world where you and I had just stayed in our first jobs. All those opportunities and things that you've done in all those other places would never have happened. And I mean, I did like you. I went and worked in Cambodia for like sort of 6 months, and like doing that was a real eye opener to how things are done differently in other countries.
You went to Cambodia?
Well, my wife Caroline works for the BBC, and she had the opportunity to go over there and run one of their projects. And I just quit my job after Beresford's and just went freelance and went out there. And and I did loads of. I was planning on having a massive holiday and just kicking back, but of course you get out into an environment like that, and suddenly you're in the expat community, and people are like, "Oh, you're a designer in Cambodia. Well, that's brilliant, because we've got loads of work for you. We don't have to send it all back to England now. We can just go direct to you."
Wow.
So I just picked up loads of clients and work while I was there. So, and it was great. And again, like you say, different environment, a different way of doing things, different people, but very much the same freedom, in as much as there were a lot of charities, so they didn't have a great deal of money, they had no time, and they need it today, so it was just like, here are our parameters, we've got like a day to turn something around, and then you're like, right, I've got 24 hours to do the most creative thing in this space and solve this brief, and then you do it, and it's like, that's awesome, and everyone's happy, and then they give you something else, and it just keeps going like that, so
I mean, because when it happens like that, you just don't you're so focused on one good idea rather than lots of ideas that become confusing. It's just you become so focused on it, and and everything you put into it is it's not just a kind of mixture, and it always works better. And I get really frustrated, in the film industry, because I see it all, even now, they still change things last minute. I mean, if you
animate everything with your face on it, and right at the end they're like, we'll take that out this time, Steve. I think we're going to take that
holding one of my mugs as a promotion.
Yeah, like this. I like it. So, well, I mean, that's a great experience, and again, great film as well. So I'm a bit jealous.
There's a District 10 coming out, apparently.
Is there?
The one about
are they getting the old 10 team back? Are you off to Vancouver?
It'd be great, but I don't think
seriously, Steve, just email them and say, I hear District 10's happening. They've probably got like a team of 500 animators and all that stuff now, and it has to go through 20 odd people. But they might want some of the OGs, some of the original crew. Well,
it will be interesting to see what the budget is, and whether a massive budget's going to make it better. And it'll be really interesting to see how it goes, really. But man, I'd love to work on that film again. I mean, I don't think I'd be going out there because I've got commitments back here. But I think it'd be great to work, from here on it.
But you could do it remotely, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
which
definitely.
I'm assuming that sort of takes us on to sort of what you're doing now and what are you doing next. I guess you're, like most people, working from home. But do you predominantly work from home anyway now? Is that, do you go into the studios so much?
We bought a property out in Herefordshire, 6 years ago. So every weekend I left London. Rwanda would come and pick me up at 5:00 in outside the company I was working for at the time, quite close to Euston. And we just drive to Hereford every Friday, come back on a Sunday. So it got quite exhausting, and I've always been wanting to kind of work remotely. But no studio. There's a couple of studios did it, but it wasn't anything kind of concrete and long term.
Yeah.
But I got a gig actually working remotely just before the pandemic kicked off, actually about 3 months before. And I was like, yes, finally I can work, out from Herefordshire, and so I basically, did that contract, but then the whole pandemic happened, and now every studio's gone sort of remote.
Well, I guess people, it's the same all over, which is like, people always kind of say, oh, well, people in their reviews, I guess, want to work from home more, and then people are like, well, maybe we'll look at that one day, and it's something we're looking into, but maybe we're not quite ready. And then suddenly something like the last year happens, and people have to, companies have to embrace people working from home. And now they're like, why didn't we do this sooner? And they're closing all their offices, and people are just working from home now. I think it's great.
It is great. I mean, there's certain aspects of office life which, our industry is very much geared towards sort of, like a social environment as well. So, they'd always organize different things for everybody as kind of team building. I guess they do it in most industries now, most industries. But, there's nothing like, finishing work if you've got a shot to do and you work hard and everyone says, let's go for beer, and I kind of, there's those certain aspects which I really miss. But the advantages definitely weigh out the disadvantages, and just being out here, I absolutely love it. But I'm back basically working for Nexus again now. We're doing some music videos, which are very exciting, and I think it's going to run in towards the end of the year, really. I think October, and then I'm hoping to set the rest of the year off, but it's back to sort of kind of quite fun stuff, really.
No, I guess that there's a world where you do both. There's like a hybrid of some, mostly you're working from Hereford, but maybe you're in London again for a certain amount of days a week or a month or whatever. I think that seems to be something that a lot of creatives seem to be doing at the moment, that kind of hybrid lifestyle. And
I think
suits me too. I think that feels like the right way to go.
Yeah, I think that's how I'd probably, if I lived closer to London, that's definitely how I'd probably do it. If I could choose, I'd probably choose to maybe come out here for a few weeks and go in for like maybe a week or two and then come out here.
Sure.
But I mean, at the moment, it's all, and I think there's a lot of studios, like if you work for, say, like ILM, Disney, they're very secretive about their NDAs, and they don't like people working from home.
Yeah,
and they are getting everyone back.
It opens them up for being hacked, like all their servers being hacked, and people nicking stuff. And I know that, like within the game industry, because I do another part of this YouTube channel, I do like some like game reviews where I just talk about like the design of them and some of the studios and that. I know that like CD Projekt Red that did the Cyberpunk game quite recently, they had a lot of their team working from home, and they just got hacked all over the place, and all their like financials were leaked online, and
really?
unused scenes that animators had put together that were leaked online, and and all this stuff. And I just feel like, I guess if you're Disney, you don't really want to be in the news with that story, do you? So you keep it a bit.
No, I mean, because Disney now, they and ILM, they're all part of Lucasfilm as well, so anything to do with Star Wars, I mean, people are just wanting to get that information, and
have you worked for ILM as well? Did you tell me?
Yes, I've worked at ILM for a while, on some terrible Michael Bay film. That involved some big robots.
Okay. You did the Transformers one, did you? All right.
Cool. But it's just I mean, that's another. That
must be an animator's nightmare. Those films are just like an explosion of animation on screen at all times. It's just there's little bits and things turning from bats to robots to cars to, it must just be like,
it was
if you're sat there trying to work out how a bear runs through the woods, how do you turn like a car into a robot and make it feel real?
That's not the painful bit. The painful bit is working with Michael Bay.
Right. Okay,
he's just an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, part industry is, part of this animation. You have to basically keep everyone happy, and some directors are really tricky.
Yeah,
I mean, some directors, they one of the big things is, you can't get too precious about your work. You can be working the shot for 2 or 3 months, and literally last minute he'll have a new idea, and he'll give, got a new idea, scrap everything.
Yes.
You got a week to basically redo this, and
that's the problem when you're working for someone that has like an infinite budget. It's like I always like working for clients that have enough money that they know what they want to do, but they're not going to go too crazy at the last minute because there isn't the budget all the time. But when you're working with clients that will just they literally ask you at the end of a project brief, how much time do you need and how much is this going to cost? It blows my mind, because the only thing I need for a job is a box put around me to know how much I can push against it and how to, but when someone sort of says, here's a load of stuff we need to do and there's no budget cap, just tell me what you think. I just don't, and the fact that it's the same thing, which is you work through a project and then suddenly in the last couple of weeks or the last few days, someone comes along and just scraps it and wants to do something totally different because there is an infinite budget and it doesn't matter.
And I think technology. I think also technology's allowed these directors to kind of just change their mind. They've given them they can do it. Back in the day, they'd film everything. They know exactly what they wanted in every single cut. But now they just change entire sequences because they can, and they know that they can just do it. So it just becomes, you see some films on TV and it looks a bit ropey because everyone's been squeezed, and they've had, they've done sort of 6 months work in 3 weeks.
And I think that crunch culture is something that is predominant in both
you get the same in your industry as well.
Absolutely, and I think now it's more talked about and people are more aware of it, but I also think the pressure now is less on the management saying you have to do stuff. It's the management saying it's your choice to do that, in which case that's fine, but you, in some ways, if you choose not to, you are restricting your potential for future work and doing future projects. So there's a balance that you have to strike. I was always just like, head down as long as it takes. I mean, when I worked at Barristers and Appetite, we'd be doing like 2-3 o'clock finishes some night, and I'd be back in the office at 7:30, and it would be like that. It wouldn't just be like the odd day. It would be like weeks and weeks of doing that because we had tight deadlines. Whereas now I can't imagine any management or any boss insisting that people did that. But there is also the thing which is like, well, you might not be working on the next project if you don't take this kind of approach on board. So
it's why I think we were talking before about it, but I remember right at the start of my career, one of my mates gave me some great advice, and he said, basically just leave at 6:30, just get the hell out of work and don't think about it until the next day. And it's quite interesting because I do tend to, I try in a week, I will, quite adamant about leaving on time. And I leave the office and I don't think about work at all. And I don't even, I mean, for the first sort of few years I did, I worked late, obviously, like we all do, but I think it's so important to get out of there at 6:30. And I just don't have anything to do with it then until next day, because I know at the end of the project, crunch time, you will be working long
You're
hours.
going to be doing it.
And I just save myself for that, and I'm prepared for it, and I don't mind doing that.
I wish I was better than that, because I'm not as good as you with that. I feel that, like, I have a sort of hard finish at sort of 5:36 every day because of the school run and kids and all that sort of stuff. But then 9 times out of 10, once we've sorted them out and had something to eat or whatever, I'll probably go back to the office just to finish up. And I'll think I'm probably just going to do like an hour or something. And suddenly it's like 12 o'clock and I'm like, what am I doing? I need to go to bed.
I just can't do it. When I stopped doing that, I guess probably about, I don't know, for a long time now, I stopped doing it. And I just can't do it now. I just can't do it. I don't have that kind of once I finish my animation brain just kind of shuts down.
That's I mean, when I step out of the office, when I'm kind of, that's, it's all turned off and I'm done, but it's during the week when there's a lot going on. I think I'll just get a head start on tomorrow, and of course tomorrow is just a repeat of today, and so I've got to get better at that. But it's funny how there was quite a long time where I was really good at finishing and not going back, but then it slowly creeps up on you, and suddenly before you know it, it's every other night, then it's every night, and and I try and avoid that. I try and keep my weekends totally free, because obviously I want to do stuff and one thing or another, but yeah, it does creep into your life. I got and that's my next mission in life, is to kind of chip away at not working so many late nights. So I guess that's sort of what you're doing now, and yeah, I want to talk about your other projects that you've been doing recently, which is which has been brilliant. Hang on a sec.
Nicely prepared.
I'm just going to get my pen. Again.
Nice book vase.
I think. Oh, sorry, vase. Yeah, the pen's just from Asda.
It's a lovely pen.
Thanks. Yeah, so you've been doing all of these things, which is some really awesome pottery stuff. So you've got like because you're out in the wilderness now, you're out in the woods. You've got like a proper potter's wheel and a barn to do it in and all this stuff. It looks really awesome.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know. I think I definitely give myself, I think 10 years ago I started to realize, I'm not going to be animating for the rest of my life. I definitely feel like I do need a bit of a change. And I think for the last 10 years I've done all kinds of stuff. I've done everything from shoemaking to cheese making to set up a little microbrewery, and just they've all involved kind of just making things, making stuff. And I think, it's quite a big thing at the moment. I think a lot of people go through that kind of phase, don't they? Well, cheese making phase.
I think, I think certainly in the last year, I think people have been reassessing a lot of what their lives are that surround the jobs they do, and whether they like those jobs, and and like you, myself, I like doing what I do, but also I wanted to do something for myself as well. So that's why I sort of started the YouTube thing, and I've been doing some more comic book stuff on the side, which isn't directly related to work, and I've been enjoying doing that because I kind of wanted to. That's something that I could kind of control in the last 12 or 18 months, where everything else was just out of control. I just felt like that was something that, if there was ever a time to do it, when you're locked down at home with all this other stuff going on, that's a good time to do it. And I feel like a lot of people have reassessed their careers and started doing these other projects, which can't be anything but a great thing in terms of a creative outlet.
It does. The thing is, what's funny about it is, I think since I got into all these kind of doing more crafty kind of stuff, I've kind of appreciated, enjoyed animation a bit more, because I basically, when you're doing something so full-time, so intensely all the time, you do need, like I said, you obviously you can get burnt out and you become a bit sick of it, and you need to get away from it. But I think it's I think just doing something different from it gives you another kind of boost. And and when I do take a break, and I set up this little ceramics company, and I absolutely I absolutely love growing and taking some time off from work and doing it. But then after a while, I then look forward to, this gig I'm starting now, I just couldn't wait to get back into it again, and I've got so much more kind of passion for animation again, and I think what I'm realizing now is what I need to do is spend just sort of, the perfect thing would be to spend sort of 6 to 8 months a year animating, and the rest spent doing the ceramics and stuff, and just that'd be a good balance. That really, I think that'd be the way I'd like to go, over the next sort of few years.
And I think that's right, because you don't always want to be just doing your 3D animation like all the time, because like you said, you can get burnt out, and also the repetition can be, you just need a break, and whether that break is just you having a holiday or a week off or whatever, that's fine. But actually taking your skill set and transferring it over to something like pottery, that's a no-brainer for me, because you're building things in 3D on screen. You've got these sort of creative shapes that are moving and doing so, and then you're taking your skills and transferring them into making these like sort of cups and jugs, and also it's not, there's a definite correlation between your skill sets, but it's just a much more tactile thing, with throwing clay and making mistakes and then doing really great. They're just awesome. Every time you put your, you've got your thing coming up on your store that there's a whole load of new stuff on there, I'm like there on the mouse, like refresh, trying to get into the shop because they just go so quickly. I mean, that must be a good feeling. You're creating all this stuff, and there's a market out there. There's people that are just desperate for it. I mean, you must have sold out of everything again already, have you? You must have done, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's this whole thing. I wasn't really meant to be. I wasn't going to sell anything. I was just going to do stuff, and then I got a few people contact me and stuff. So it's all just started quite slowly, and now it's I mean, it's weird that it's actually, I mean, I find it quite funny that I wasn't meant to be selling stuff yet. It's more of a hobby, and then I mean I'm really stoked that people like it and they want to buy it, and it's fantastic, and it's
anyone that's seen it. I mean, I'll I'm always good for sort of reposting stuff, and if you I'll, at the end of this, I'll put all your details, your social media stuff, and all that stuff. I usually put that in a link alongside the when this goes up. But I always, it just looks great, and I've had so many people responding to that, saying how nice all the pieces are and all that kind of stuff. So you must be really sort of pleased with that. As such, to do, like you said, to do something for yourself and then find this market of people that actually like it as well. I mean, it's just so, must be very fulfilling.
It's great. I mean, it's nice to when you see people send nice comments and send some photographs of these little things I've made in their homes, and they're using it on quite a personal level. They're using it to eat out of or drink out of. It's or like a little vase. It's just it means it means a lot, really. It's quite it's a very nice little thing to get into, and I'm going to see where it goes. It's I feel like I'm at the start of the animation where the first thing you learn in animation is doing a bouncing ball, and it's like I feel like I'm right at the start of throwing simple stuff, but when you look at what other people doing, there's a lot to learn, and it's going to be
but you've obviously got a total natural touch with it, because the pieces, there's people that have been doing it for years and years that I've seen their work, and it's not very good. Whereas like you've just sort of got into it, but obviously maybe all those years of going to different classes and picking up different skills and ideas and all that kind of stuff has sort of fed into this. And this is this, I just think it's brilliant. And like you said, why can't there be a world where you do both, where you are animating definitely. And then you are living the kind of lifestyle, country lifestyle, working from home. And I just think it's great,
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's going in the right direction. It's good fun. I mean, it's tiring, I get up quite early sometimes to do it, and then I'm doing it in the evening sometimes. So it's about the balance at the end of the day. And we do a lot of gardening here, so there's a lot of things to do, and it's a lot of it's quite physical work as well. So it's trying to kind of balance everything, really, so I don't get too kind of exhausted.
but I guess also that kind of living that sort of slightly more rural lifestyle, it kind of translates into the work that you're doing with your pots and everything, and it's very earthy and very like touchy feely, and it feels genuine, whereas I feel like if you were still living in London and making them in the spare bedroom, it wouldn't have the same kind of but you know what I mean, the environment really influences what the final product looks like, and I really
definitely
like that.
It does definitely. It's but like I still I love the countryside a lot, but I've again, like animation, I think with London, you leave London and you suddenly you miss it as well. I love coming back to London now, and I went through a phase of wanting to get away from the city, and I think now I've got this balance. We go back now and again, and I love going back there, and I look forward to going back there, and I think I'll always be connected with London, and the city. So
yeah, no, that's really, really good, mate. And I'm glad that it's all going really well. I mean, it's been a ropey time recently for a lot of people, and it's nice to hear that things are going good. So I look forward to seeing District 10, 11 and 12 when they come out. But yeah, and again, like, just keep the pottery coming. I'm literally the first person in the room when that, as soon as the little link goes live, I'm like, I just love it all. So yeah, no, keep it coming, because I do like all that stuff.
Cheers.
So I guess there's one last question, and then you get to ask the next person on the podcast a question. So the last question is from my good friend Sean Pereira. Now, he did go to Birmingham. He did the same course that I did, but I don't know if you ever met him. Possibly not. But he left a question last time which said, what would you do if, I mean, we might have already covered this, but what would you do if you weren't doing your current job? And can you see yourself doing something else, or would you consider planning a second career? I think you sort of, and that concludes the podcast. I think we kind of established that that sort of happened anyway, you know.
But it's interesting what you just said then. You know, it doesn't have to be a complete new career. It can be a balance of two careers. You know, it can be a balance of hopefully animation and hopefully ceramics. You know, it's all about, and maybe one day, you know, it might be completely ceramic, you know, complete ceramics. But at the moment, you know, I think it's yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a combination of the two, you know. But yeah, I think I've got a few more years left in me yet for the animation side of things.
Oh, definitely.
But there will be a point, I think, where, you know, I mean, students, when you see animated student work now, it's absolutely incredible. It's so good, and there might be a point where, you know what, I can't compete with them. You know, the courses now are so highly kind of, you know, the tutors are absolutely, you know, they're from a really good sort of animation, traditional animation background, and they're fantastic. And there might be a point where I'll have to sort of, you know, switch off my
well you kind of hope that after all this time, I don't know if we mentioned 20 years, but after all this time, maybe the course has got that they're learning on have got much better than the ones we were on, you know. I like to think that like the designers that are coming up and learning, you know, at college at the moment are getting taught a much higher level than I was, you know. And I'm sure, like you said, you know, your introduction to 3D animation, how that sort of worked, I'm sure people are getting access to that much younger than you did, so they're probably deciding that they're going to be getting involved in that at a much earlier stage in their life, and education's geared up to help them usher them into that world, you know, whereas when you started, there wasn't, options were fairly limited, you know.
I'm sure it should. I mean, I think it's such a big industry, especially the games industry now. You know, they've had to get much better courses. I mean, it used to be there's some fantastic animation courses in France. We just couldn't compete against them, but now I think they are getting better. I don't know if they're as good as the, you know, like Super Infocom and Goblins in France, but they are getting better. Thank God, because, you know, there just wasn't anything around, you know, when we were back at university.
And there has been some bad CGI in the past. I've seen a lot of it, you know. I mean, I still think, like, I remember watching Jurassic Park back in the day, and that's still brilliant. It still looks amazing, you know. But a lot of films in between now and then have done some shoddy jobs, and you know, especially like Deep Space Nine and some of those Star Trek shows. Like, I don't know what's going on there, that, you know, but you know, hopefully the quality. I mean, a lot of the films you watch now, I mean, they're just, you know, especially like the Pixar movies and things, they're just out, you know, they're just so far leaps ahead of what anyone could have imagined a decade ago.
Definitely.
You know?
If you look at the original Toy Story now, you know, compared to the latest Toy Story, it's just, you know.
Well, the first one looks like a tech demo, doesn't it? And like the one now is just like what it was meant to be, you know. It is amazing, you know.
I still think the first one's the best one, though. The story and everything is just, you know, it's just such a, I think it's also, you know, you kind of, I think it's one of those things which you remember when it came out, completely blown away by it.
I was going to say, as an animator, you probably have those key moments where you see things that, you know, Toy Story was such a huge thing when it came out. Still is a massive brand, but obviously as an animator, you must have been like, you know,
it's just incredible. You know, it's just that another point in your life when you think, oh my God, you know, that's just, you know, that's what I want to do.
Another benchmark.
Completely.
So now I guess it is your turn to ask a question for the next person. Now, I think the next person is going to be a writer who I know quite well. But again, it might change depending, because, you know, these things, I try and do them as often as I can do, but often some people aren't available and one thing or another. So it might be someone different. But, you know, I just wondered if you, you know, you wanted to put a question to the next lucky person to come on my podcast.
It's a very simple question, but it's what is it about your industry which you don't like, you dislike, and how can it be changed, and can it be changed?
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, for another time. Okay, well, mate, I think that's pretty much it, really. I think we've done the marathon. We're pretty good on time. We normally let these things just roll on and on for hours, but we've come in on a good time, so I'm pleased about that. So, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking about, you know, your journey and all that stuff, and, you know, what you've been doing and the work you've been doing and the pottery and everything. I mean, it's all so impressive, and, you know, you must be when you look back over the last 20 years, you must be pleased. I know you're always looking forward and wanting to up your game and all that stuff, but you must look back and think like you've had a pretty good run of it. I know I look back and think I've had some great experiences. So
yeah, no, I think it's great that, I think it's like with anything, it's just good to find something you've got a passion for, and it's as simple as that, really. You've got to find something you enjoy, and work shouldn't be work, and it should be really enjoyable, and it's not like you can't wait to get into work every day.
But you need a balance. You don't want to have a job where it's like you said about the sign writing, that kind of the sign cutting out. That is a job that someone does every day, and of course that's the way the world is. But if you don't find any joy in that at all, it can be quite soul destroying.
You've got to just enjoy it, really. And I feel very lucky to have found animation. It's a great industry. It's global, so they're traveling around, and it's just great. And most 95% of the people are great to work with. It's a good industry. It's still a small industry. You always bump into the same people all the time. And they become very good friends. I've become got some really close friends from the industry. So it's been great.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, I guess the only other thing to say, other than the sort of closing remarks I've got to sort of wrap up with, is how can people see your work and promote your work? Obviously, I'll put a link in the descriptor anyway, just to your pottery stuff and all that kind of thing. I mean, and in terms, if anyone's listening that wanted to hire you to do 3D animation, how does that work? Do you have an agent, or what?
The best thing is LinkedIn. I joined LinkedIn a long time ago, and it's just been great. But I mean, I've just got a website with all my animation on there, which hasn't been updated for quite a while, but it's stevejamesbrown.com.
Okay.
And my ceramics thing, if you want to buy some nice pots.
Hang on a sec. I just get my pen again. That's where my pen goes, mate. That's where my pen goes. So what's the web address? Sorry,
it's just Steve Brown Ceramics, and Instagram is just Potter Brown.
Potter Brown, and you've got quite a few followers on Instagram now. You've got a little gang.
Yeah, they're building up slowly. But it's I'm quite new to Instagram, so
but no, you're doing a really good job. People, and that's what I mean about the location environment that you're in creating these things is such a big part of the story of where they come from, and I think that goes a long way to why people like there's a connection to nature, and the way the things that you post on Instagram, where it's you kind of carrying them into the kiln to do the firing, or if you're first throwing
the action shots,
so you walking slowly from an explosion, that kind of stuff, as the kiln just blows up behind you,
bit of VFX in the background.
Exactly. Actually, there's a third career option for you there, which I think like animation and ceramics. No one's explored that yet. But that's I mean, that's such a big part of that story that I think that's certainly a reason why people connect to it, which I think is awesome. So, mate, thanks very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
It's been great to catch up. And well, I mean, I always ask sort of if you've got time in the future, and I've got a different set of questions, or maybe we'll do something different. You're always welcome to come back on.
That'd be great, definitely.
Find out what's happening in a year or two with your pottery and all that sort of stuff. It'd be great.
Yeah, great stuff. I'll be back.
Yeah, mate, you should have that as your catchphrase. No one's ever said that before. Right, I'm just going to wrap up by saying, well, thanks for watching, and you can obviously download this podcast. If you're listening to it already, then thanks for downloading. If you haven't, you can download it on Apple, and actually several other good podcasting sites. But I'll put the links in the descriptor, and you can obviously view this all on YouTube. And thanks for watching. So I'll see you next time. I guess the only thing left to say is be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Cheers.